Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a brand new installment of the ME Show. My name is Ali Mehdaoui. We are in the ME studios, and I am super excited because we got a guest that you're going to want to hear from. And obviously, as you know, always we do everything to bring value. So I will do everything in my power to get as much nuggets, information, and knowledge out of her so you can get those the notepads that you have filled up, and you can get healthier, wealthier, and in many cases, abundantly filled with this one episode. Now, she happens to be an educated, decorated, not only best-selling author, not only she is a multi-award winning doctor, not only she has a very well expanded business, but for the very first time, she's gracing us here at the ME Show with the information that she's going to be sharing with you. And I am super excited about her story from growing up in a family that automatically and organically grew food. And she had no idea where her path was going to be and didn't realize that all her life she was being groomed to be a healer. And now, and for the very first time, ladies and gentlemen, do me a huge favor and give a lot of virtual applause to the one and only Kathi Perry. Hello, Dr. Perry. How you doing today?
Hey, I'm good. How are you, Ali? Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. I am super excited truly to take a little bit of your time and get as many information out of you as possible. Usually we get sued by KFC and McDonald's for so many golden nuggets that we try to get out of our guests. So I'm hoping I make another record-breaking lawsuit today. So let's begin with the beginning. You know, your story is fascinating, how you grew up and how your parents were growing food, something that you don't really see as much, if any, at all. So talk to me a little bit about how this whole journey, how it started, how was your upcoming, and how this Dr. Kathi Perry was developed.
Sure, I'd be happy to share that. I grew up in Kansas and left Kansas in 1988 when I came to Texas. My mother, who was a product of the Depression and was actually born in 1911, I was born to parents that were 43 and 50, so they had lived through a lot of things that people now sometimes don't have a concept of. And we lived out in the country. I had horses. That's my Zen thing that I do in order to keep my sanity. And we had a garden. And my mother was very into organic gardening long before it was ever popular. And she took that publication, Organic Gardening or something. Anyway, she would do things like, to control the pests, she'd go out and pick bugs off the plants. And she had a special dedicated blender. And she would take those bugs into the blender and she would put them in there. She would mix them with some Dawn dishwashing soap. She would blend them up and she would take that mixture out and spray them back on the plants. Obviously, we had horses, so the horse manure was good fertilizer. We had compost piles. Nothing went to waste. And so I grew up with that concept. And my mom also was a reflexologist, which is someone who works on people's feet, and you have different reflex points on your feet.
Wow.
And from a very young age, I can remember that before we ever did mainstream medicine and medical doctors, they would take me to the chiropractor and have me adjusted. And I grew up quite differently than many people. And I think it's made a huge impact, not only on me and how I am and function at age 70, but I also think that it makes a big impact on my family and certainly my patients that I've come to know and love over the last 30 years.
That's amazing. And I genuinely can feel that passion. So talk to me about how and when did that decision making of I'm going to go to the path of medicine and or chiropractic, or like, was it in high school? Was it an early age? Was it after you kind of had to pick a major? How was that decision making, or was it naturally for you knowing exactly what you were supposed to do?
Well, it was sort of like people walked up in front of me and said, "Here, listen to me, you're going this way." When I was in high school, I wanted to be a veterinarian, and then I found out how much math I would have to take to do veterinary medicine school, and so I freaked out and got scared and didn't do that. I did a year of college, and I started that when I was 17. Didn't really find any great passion in it, so I quit and went back home, spent some time, got into banking and business administration, and worked in that arena for about 14 years. So I have a lot of business experience and management experience as well. I had gone about as far as I could go without getting my MBA, going back to school. And also about that time, I had an opportunity to train and show horses professionally. So I said goodbye to corporate America and started training and showing horses, had some really nice paint horses and national champion horses that I had trained. And that brought us to Texas. And I needed a chiropractor when I came to Texas. When we got here, it was middle of the winter, and one of the reasons that we had chosen Texas was because the winters are warmer here, unlike Kansas, where it's very cold most of the time. And
Brutally cold.
yeah, and the wind blows a lot. And so we came to Texas, we came to the DFW area, moved into a little place called Mansfield, which is kind of a bedroom community. At that point, there was nothing in Mansfield except the Cowbell Arena, Rodeo City Cafe, a Pizza Hut, and a Whataburger. And so anyway, the people that we had come to work for had these national champion paint horses, and the gentleman got transferred to Michigan, and they wanted to move the whole horse operation to Michigan. And we kind of looked at it, and no, that's even further north than Kansas, so we're not going to go there. So ended up staying. My husband at the time and I, we ended up splitting up and getting divorced. And the chiropractor that I finally found, who was from Mansfield, happened to need somebody to work for him. And I was kind of in a transition place, and I offered to help him out until he could find someone else. And with all of my years of business and banking administration, well, it was really good for him because I had experience, and it was really good for me because it put me in a whole different environment. And I started really enjoying watching people's lives be changed by the different techniques and the different things that we did at that clinic. So after a period of time, I realized that he wasn't really looking for anybody else. And I confronted him with that. And he just said, well, I was hoping that you wouldn't notice that we didn't have any applications or anything. And I said, well, I've been here for about 45, 60 days. And I said, things are starting to pick up dramatically. So let's do this. I'll work for you for another 60 days. And if we can do the things I think we can, then you can pay me X amount. And he agreed to it. And after the next 60 days, we were rocking and rolling, and things were really good. And I started going to seminars with him, and his handwriting was really bad. So he would talk to the instructors, and he would say, hey, can I bring my assistant in here with me? Her handwriting's easily readable. And, sometimes we have people come to the clinic, and I'd like for them to be able to read notes. And they go, oh, yeah, bring her in. In today's, that was, 33 years ago. In today's place, I doubt that it would be that easy just to get somebody in to take notes for you, unless you really couldn't write. So it just kind of evolved from there. And then after we started going to these seminars, and they were not your usual chiropractic techniques that most people think about. It was things like total body modification and sacro-occipital technique and applied kinesiology and some acupuncture. And these instructors would come over to me at break and would say, did you get all that? Is there anything that we can do to help clarify anything? And after a period of time and showing up with the same instructors at different levels of their techniques, they started going, would you like to workshop with the doctors? And the only stipulation they put on me was you can't workshop with the doctor that you're with. You have to workshop with other doctors. So I thought, okay. So I did. And then they started going to these instructors and going, somebody needs to really push her. She's got a lot of talent to do this. She needs to go to school. And so people kept telling me that I need to go to school. And I was like, oh, I don't know. I'd have to go back. I'd have to do all my prerequisites. And I used that excuse for probably a year and a half or so. And finally, Dr. Carl Parker, that's the son of the founder of Parker College of Chiropractic, he came up to me and he went, are you planning on being alive when you're 41 years old? And I was kind of indignant and a little bit insulted.
What kind of question is that, right? Like, are you planning to be alive when you're 41?
Yeah, exactly. It was like, well, yeah, I am planning on that. And he kind of took me and shook me, and he goes, wouldn't you rather do it with doctor in front of your name? And I didn't.
My goodness,
I didn't have an answer. And so I started working on my prerequisites, got done with them, got accepted into Parker. My mom steps up and goes, I never told you, but because you couldn't figure out what you wanted to be when you grew up, I have a bunch of money sitting here that was supposed to be for your college. And she goes, it's not enough to pay for your tuition and everything, but it is enough to keep you from having to work while you're in school. And it'll pay most of your living expenses. So that's what happened. And the next thing I knew, I was in school. And the next thing I knew, I was graduating. And
Yeah, no, it's fascinating, and ladies and gentlemen, because look, you hear a lot of the individuals who follow such a path, right? And great, you can make it, but this is an extremely decorated individual. I was looking at your awards for 17 years in a row, from 2000 to 2017. National Registry of Who's Who by the Life Member, nationwide registers Who's Who in executives and business, Seth Moore's Who's Who's, American Directory of the Who's Who's executive and business. That's in, again, this is different periods of your career. Mom approved by the DFWchild.com, 10 Best Patient Satisfaction Award by the American Institute of Chiropractors, Best of Alvarado, Texas chiropractor, and Spectrum Award, City Beat News. And I mean, that's fascinating. And this has nothing to do with your book. This has nothing to do with a technology that you're excited about as well, that you and I talked about offline. That is incredibly amazing. And kudos to you on that. The question that everybody asks is, who do you usually work with? Like, what kind of patient would be the ideal patient for you?
well, obviously, in the beginning, I'd work with whoever wanted.
Whoever's coming through the door.
Whoever's coming through the door, and it didn't make any difference if it was Saturday, Sunday, day, night, early morning, midnight. I
Yeah.
would for a patient. However, things have evolved and have kind of become much different recently. Right now, my main interest is working with people that have chronic pain or neurological disorders, things that nobody has addressed previously, and that I can utilize all of the different techniques that I do. I have about 40 plus techniques in my, what I call my bag of tricks. And I don't use any of them in a pure sense. It's mostly mix and match. I call it eclectic chiropractic. And it really isn't even chiropractic because it just isn't. That's my license. It gives me the permission to touch people, but it just goes so much deeper than all of that. So we've kind of come to call it functional wellness because we can't call it functional medicine. The Texas Medical Association frowns on any of us using the word medicine because they think that that's practicing medicine without a license.
Right.
So we've come to functional wellness, and nobody can argue with that. And we help people find their path, write their own manual for their bodies, and have the most optimal journey through living in life that they can possibly have. Necks and backs and headaches and things like that, the people have had off and on, and that seem to be kind of their patterns. I have a few other people now that I can refer those people to, and I only accept new patients these days for myself by consult and interview. I have a 19-page patient intake form. Gives me a lot of information. I think that if I let people talk long enough and ask enough questions, that they're going to tell me what's wrong with them, much like you're doing with me right now.
Yeah, no, I totally believe it. What would you say the one thing that everybody needs to know that they need a chiropractor for? Because in many cases, we tend to think unless something is clicking or there's a back pain, I really don't need a chiropractor. But you've mentioned something that caught my attention as you were just explaining. You said headaches. That's something that, what does a headache, like how can a chiropractor help me with a headache?
The nervous system, which consists of the brain, the spinal cord, and your peripheral nervous system that goes to your hands and your feet and legs, starts out with different centers in the brain, and most of those nerves, as they go to the different parts of your body, exit through your spine and different different places that they come out of your spine. And you can think of it kind of like an electrical cord that's plugged into the wall, but maybe it isn't plugged completely in. And you walk by it and you brush it with your leg, and so the lights flicker on and off. Well, sometimes that's what happens with our nervous system. The lights flicker on and off. And it's much like with our vehicles, we change the oil, we rotate the tires. Hopefully we don't just carry duct tape with us and put a piece of duct tape over the red warning engine light. If it comes on, we actually stop and do something about it. So pain in the body is really just the body's way of getting your attention and saying, hey, something's wrong. And right now it's just a little wrong. But if you let it go too long without acknowledging it, then the whole system starts to break down and your electrical system starts. And it's like somebody didn't just walk by and kind of brush that electrical plug. It's like somebody just pulled the plug out. And that's when we see people go into extreme situations of degeneration and end up in the hospital. So it's important to maintain your nervous system just like you maintain your car. And you can do that by getting regular adjustments and seeing people that address not just the whole body. I have to be a little careful here, but when we were in chiropractic school, there were kind of descriptions of chiropractors. Some of them were described as being pop and pray, rack 'em, stack 'em, crack 'em. I prefer root cause resolution for the type of chiropractic and healing work that we do here. And so it's not about just finding a symptom and trying to address that for the moment. Ours is like going way deep down under and actually rebooting that nervous system so that the whole body and the whole brain and electrical system works much better and in synergy with each other.
I love that. And ladies and gentlemen, obviously keep in mind, this session is for education and also a bit of infotainment purposes. So always check with your physical doctor, your expert, your chiropractor in your own neck of the woods before you make any decisions. We are not advising you in any way, shape, or form without knowing what you may have or may not have. Is that an accurate statement? Just to make sure no one...
That's a very accurate statement. In fact, my front desk, if somebody calls and they want, what should I do about whatever, their standard answer is, I'm sorry, I can't give you that information because you're not a patient. You would need to talk to your regular doctor about that.
Correct.
Or you need to come and see us.
Correct. Beautiful. Okay. We are going to take a little bit of a commercial break. After we do come back, we're going to dive into a few different areas of the meat and potato of a career of yours on the services, the book, the health and wellness products that you are ambassador of, things that you are extremely passionate about and you want to share with our community and our audience. So we'll take a little commercial break and we'll be right back.
So I was a contacts man, wore contacts throughout basically my whole college year. And one day I woke up and my eyes were swollen. So go to the eye doctor, get my eyes checked. She gets me, prescribes me this little eye drops. These eye drops was $109. I was like, just for this. She said, put it in 3 times a day, everything will be okay. So I end up running out of the drops. And my eyes are getting better. And I'm like, okay, well, I don't need to go anymore. I wake up probably 2 days later and my eyes are like swollen. They're irritated to light. I couldn't even look at my cell phone without my eyes hurting. And Dr. Kathy's like, what's going on and everything. And her husband was there too. And they said, hey, you know what you should try? And I was like, what? Colloidal silver. So that next night I put some colloidal silver. I got some from Sprouts and I put it in my eyes. And within 30 minutes, my eyes start just less sensitive. It was less sensitive. They calmed down from the swelling. The next day, they were better. And I came back and I told Dr. Kathy, I said, this stuff is amazing. This stuff is amazing. If I was never working here, I wouldn't even known. But Dr. Kathy, she made it work. She's an amazing woman. And I've been here for probably 5 months and I learned so much from her. She has a good heart and a good soul, and you can just tell that she's there to help you. She don't want it's not a quick fix. She wants to find the root of the problem and she wants to get it taken care of. I love Dr. Kathi.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Make sure you visit healthbyhandswellness.com. And of course, make sure you also go into our description where we have all the social media assets, how to follow and connect with Dr. Kathi Perry. All right, back to business. Let's talk about the different services and the methodology that you've put forward in the marketplace. I'm fascinated by a few. I mean, you kind of talked to us about you have about 40 different, as you call it, tricks in your toolbox, right? And you've kind of given us a little bit of an idea of how you work with your patients. I want to dive into a few different elements. It piqued my interest, and a few of them, the matrix repartnering. What? Yeah, I repatterning. Yeah, please help me understand. I can't even say it right. This is the last thing that I'm gonna say, Rich, for the rest of this episode. That I'm trying to read a big word. Rich is our chief production officer on the other side. I usually get a look whenever I mess something up. That I just realized I'm not as smart as I think to be. So please educate us on what that is.
Matrix repatterning is the most recent technique that I've added to my bag of tricks. And it has to do with actually being able to change the shape and the diameter and the dimension of bones in your body. Many times through traumas that we have at that point of impact, all your body fluids, everything moves away from that point of impact. And when that happens, then the swelling and the inflammation comes in and can actually lodge up against your organs and your bones and cause a distortion pattern with them. And so as a result of that, I have a dog here that's trying to get my attention. As a result of that, people end up in chronic pain and they end up with all kinds of myofascial issues. When I first learned about it in 2018, the developer, Dr. George Roth, he is from Markham, Ontario in Canada, and he had put an ad in one of the peer-reviewed journals that says, you can change the shape of bones, you can change the size of bones. And I was like, yeah, right, okay, whatever. But it happened that I had a knee that had been giving me a lot of problems. I'd had a horse fall with me a couple of years before. Didn't really think I was injured, but my leg was trapped underneath the horse and was bruised pretty badly. And so I thought, well, I haven't taken this and I want to see if they really can do what they say they can do. So I bought a ticket and ended up about 2.5 weeks later in Ontario. And long story short, by the end of the weekend, I had zero pain in my knees.
By the end of the weekend?
By the end of the weekend.
I thought you would say by the end of the year or something, but that's fascinating. Okay, go on.
Yeah, it's really amazing. I have a video. Not sure. We just reworked some of the things on my personal website. But if anybody wants to go to the Matrix Repatterning website, there's all kinds of testimonials. There's a video that I did with one of my horses that we thought we were going to have to call off a sale on because they started limping. And anyway, it's kind of cute. It's not very long. It's a couple of minutes. But anyway, we ended up helping this horse, and it's really interesting to see this horse go from lame and bobbing his head to getting worked on for about an hour, hour and a half in the evening. And then the next day going out in the arena and being absolutely completely sound. And it's all with this matrix repatterning, and it's about finding different vectors and how those vectors can contain the pressure that's in the tissue and then ultimately release it. It's kind of like if you have a plastic water bottle, and you make a dent in it.
Back the way it needs to be, and it was originally.
You can find 2 spots there, and if you push on them just a little bit, that dent will pop right out. And so that's kind of what we're doing when your body is, we're popping out.
I gotta say, and again, medicine and science aside, God is so good. Like, to hear that our body has the ability to do the things that it does, it is fascinating. Okay, here's another one that really caught my attention: allergy elimination. Hello, we all are paying attention now. So how?
How? That's what everybody wants to know, how. I started out doing the allergy elimination work through a technique called total body modification that I actually learned a lot of while I was still working for the doctor that got me into all of this. And it involves muscle testing and kinesiology. Every substance that we have in our environment has a specific frequency or an electrical charge of its own, including our bodies. and different parts of our bodies have slightly different frequencies as well. So it's about fine-tuning how your body's electrical field interacts with your environment and things around you. And so we go through a process with muscle testing and vials that we can actually find out where those disharmonic places are. And we can do a correction by tapping on some places on the back. From that evolved electrodermographic testing, which exposes your body's energy field to a lot of programmed digitized frequencies. Those digitized frequencies then are recorded by computers and by the program, and actually then will take them and break them down into pieces that are specific for you that we can then treat via laser light administered to acupuncture points on the ears. And we can also treat through spinal segments up and down the back and other acupuncture points on the rest of the body. We get about a 90% success rate with it, which is amazing. Some of it is also influenced by how clean your diet is. People that eat a lot of sugar, that have had a lot of antibiotics, that have a lot of gut issues, things like leaky gut that lets proteins and things that shouldn't be in your bloodstream out there, keeps your food from being digested. If you have those kind of situations, it takes a little bit longer. But if you have a pretty clean diet and you just are allergic to a few things, generally speaking, in a couple of weeks' time with 4 or 5 treatments, you're going to feel a whole lot better.
That's amazing. Your favorite lifeline. So I kind of understand it from just my 18-year career in business and many seminars that I've gone through, the Joe Dispensas, the Bob Proctors, and reading the placebo effect and so many different things, and seeing that example where if you talk good to a plant and you talk bad to a plant and the difference, but you actually are documented it with a lifelong career. So please talk to us, because this is an important piece that goes beyond just health, I think. What is the lifeline or net?
All right. So I started out doing neuro-emotional technique. Everything in my world has some sort of an acronym or is shortened into initials. So neuro-emotional technique becomes NET. Lifeline becomes just like LL or something like that. Sacro-occipital is SOT. I started out doing neuro-emotional technique largely because it was presented at the first research seminar that I was invited to that was out of country. It was in Acapulco, and it was put on by the Total Body Modification group and all of the questers and the advanced practitioners, and I got invited to go even though I wasn't a doctor. So it was really interesting in finding that one of the presenters at that very first TBM conference that I was at was Dr. Scott Walker, who he and his wife developed the neuro-emotional technique. So it used a lot of the same body points that I was already familiar with using. And as a result, we ended up going to a neuro-emotional technique seminar, and I learned it and I used it pretty much for my emotional clearing technique for years. I think that people that have really chronic problems, we all have skeletons in our closet someplace, which tend to be emotional and situational and things that maybe we didn't want to talk about, post-traumatic stress, what happened, and it affects the body and how it can function. It inhibits the organs to be able to work optimally and for everything to work synergistically together. Simply put, you have to have energy flowing through all of your acupuncture meridians that go to and through all of these other different places in your body. And if you don't have that, then there can be a lot of blocked energy. And oftentimes, if things that are considered to be structural or biochemical aren't addressing what the people's complaint and problem is, you have to start going on a safari to find out what kind of emotional things might be lodged in their subconscious. So I did net for a lot of years. And then in about 2007, I was supposed to be teaching at a Parker seminar, and I got this information piece that said, hey, come to a Lifeline seminar in Chicago, Northbrook, Illinois. And I really don't like Illinois very much because it's cold there too. But anyway, I got that notice, and then I got another one, and then I started delving into it a little bit and realized that a fellow TBM practitioner, Dr. Darren Wiseman, is who developed the Lifeline technique. And so we had practiced very similarly to each other when we were both doing just our chiropractic and acupuncture.
Right.
So I started having dreams about going to this seminar, and I called Dr. Carl Parker up and I said, I'm really sorry I'm going to do this. And I wouldn't, but I'm literally being pushed hard to go to this Lifeline seminar in Chicago. And he said, he says, I understand. You got to listen to your little voices. And so I went to Chicago, and part of my backstory is that I had a granddaughter who was killed in a car accident when she was 2.5.
Sorry to hear.
And yeah, we just figured it out the other day. She'd be like 29 or almost 30 this year. But anyway, I thought I had that pretty much all under control and wrapped up, and I was good, and I didn't probably need anything else. So we go to this Lifeline seminar, and because I have some injuries from horses over the years, one of them being I've broken my back in 5 places. I like to sit on the edge in seminars where if I get uncomfortable or I need to, I can get up and stand for a while, or I can walk at the back and not interrupt anybody else or have to crawl over anybody. And so I was standing up at the back of this class, and Dr. Wiseman's down in front, and he's demonstrating the different areas and techniques. And he says, does anybody have any low back pain here? And I was like, well, yeah, I do. And so he said, well, come on down here. So we went down there, and he did a Lifeline segment on me. Took probably 15, 20 minutes, maybe a little bit longer than that. And when I walked back to my seat, I was like, wow, that's pretty interesting. My back doesn't hurt nearly as bad as it did. And so I kind of went, okay. And so I went to my room. Well, I hadn't been feeling really good for about 6 weeks before I went to this seminar. And I just kind of went, so my immune system's down. I'm busy. It's change of seasons. Just got through the holidays. My diet wasn't exactly pristine. And the next thing I knew, I had spiked a fever, and then the fever broke, and then I was cold, and then I got more. And I went through this whole thing during the night. And when all of it settled down, all I could do was cry. And what I realized was I had just had all of that grief and emotion locked into my body, and had put that skeleton in my closet and said, I'm too busy to think about it right now. I'm not going to deal with it. And because I know so many techniques, I'm pretty good at manipulating through things. What I found with Lifeline is that you can't manipulate that outcome and where this can go.
Yeah.
And so it deals with your different areas of your body, like I was saying before, your body, mind, and spirit, your spiritual part of it, biochemistry, structure. And it goes and looks for things that we call original occurrences that might be locked away someplace, but are still affecting the energetic flow of your body and your ability to heal. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, I love earlier when you said we all have some skeletons hidden from our past. Our chief production officer, he said, I have a whole walk-in closet.
I think some of us have really big mansions, and all that they have in them are closets.
I can guarantee you, somebody in the comments is gonna write, you should see my basement, and somebody's gonna try to outdo them. You should see my mother-daughter house on the side.
Yeah, crazy. And over the years, I've attracted a lot of sexual abuse people, people with PTSD, loss of loved ones, which I can really personally relate to. And it's been really interesting to watch how their health changes so much so quickly when you start opening this up, but it's done in such a way with so much love. Symbols have power, just like words do. So for instance, you were talking about water and whatnot. Dr. Emoto that came up with the, you can put love on a bottle of water, or you can play heavy metal to it, and the water crystals aren't nearly as pretty as they are when you play Bach and Beethoven and Brahms. But the same thing happens with how we interact with somebody else's energy field. So for instance, this is the universal sign in sign language, American Sign Language, for I love you. And
now I understand why your picture in your website has you doing that. I was like, I thought you were doing like rock and roll, baby, but now I get it.
and by the way, this is I love you. And if you put the thumb in, it's hook 'em horns here in Texas. So anyway, Darren, Dr. Wiseman, that developed it, has a brother that's deaf. And so they all signed a lot in their house. And so he was working on a patient, and he had all of these things kind of what we call stacked into the patient's program. And he turned around because his brother came in, and they signed for a minute, and they ended up at the end both going, I love you.
Mm.
And he turned back around to his patient, and all of his indicators that he'd had were gone. And he was like, that's odd. That's never happened. And so he started thinking back through what he'd done. And the only thing he could figure out was this symbol for I love you was so powerful in that energy field that it just cleared everything. And that's essentially what happens. So when we go through it, we use muscle testing, kinesiology to go into these different areas, but we clear it all with I love you held up close to the person or within their energy field or through quantum field. So it's fascinating stuff. You never see the same thing twice. I don't know how many of them now that I've had done. For the most part, if I get in a place where I don't like the way I feel for several days, I'm going to call my lifeline buddy and go, hey, I need a lifeline. Okay. I don't like this, because it just collapses so many patterns so quickly.
And I'm gonna say it again. I said it before. God is so good. It's just God is so good. Okay. Let's talk about be strong for life. But before we talk and dive into it, I want to read a direct quote here. This is from and I hope I'm saying it right. Janet Childers. And here's what she said. I am 90 years old and give nothing but praise to be strong for life. I could not stand alone without holding on to something, but now the simple task of walking is steadier, and I can stand in the shower. I can also stand alone and turn on our floor lamp. I mean, that's every soon and one day and eventually 90-year-old is wish to be able to sustain our bodies by ourselves. Now, if I really got your attention, ladies and gentlemen, with that direct testimony, now pay attention. Talk to us, please, about the concept of be strong for life.
Sure. That's Janet Childers. And by the way, just like 2 months ago, I went to her 100th birthday celebration. She's still going on. Yeah, she's a great lady, has a great family. The Be Strong for Life is group of equipment. It consists of whole body vibration. It consists of a biodensity machine that you do 4 exercises on. What we call a react machine, which causes eccentric movement in your legs and your feet and pelvis. It is sort of like if you were jumping off of something and landing, how that shock and how that balance is maintained as you hit the ground and come back up. I think snowboarders use some of that kind of thing too, although that's not me because it's cold out there. So we actually started using the Be Strong for Life because I had some x-rays done looking at my old fractures and whatnot, and saw that I was developing a little bit of osteopenia, and the radiologist called it. And I knew I wasn't ever going to take any osteoporosis drugs or do anything. So I started looking for different ways that could be natural and that would treat, that didn't involve 5 or 6 hours in the gym doing resistance training. And I ran across whole body vibration, and the whole body vibration plates were developed in Russia as a treatment and an answer to the Russian cosmonauts that had gone into outer space and spent some time and came back, and they were having a lot of bone loss. And so they were trying to look for some way to rebuild it. So they came up with these machines. The one that we have is actually a power plate brand, and it has a triplanar movement where the platform on the professional sized ones is about 3 foot by 2 foot in size. Anything that you can do on the floor, if you have room to do it up on the power plate, you can do that. And it cuts the amount of time necessary by 2/3. So for instance, you can do a 15-minute workout on a power plate and get the same benefits as if maybe you did 45 minutes to an hour of work on the floor. What it does is it stimulates where the muscles come into the bones. It stimulates those and causes your muscles to contract at about 40 to 60 times per second. And in doing that, then it stimulates the circulation down into the bone and causes your bones to produce more stem cells and osteoblasts and to build back more bone that is like your original bone and has an increased density with it. Over the years that we've had it, if you look at my x-rays now, you can't even hardly tell where my fractures were from when I broke my back, which is pretty incredible to me. With our patients, what we see is usually at the end of a year, if they haven't started actually rebuilding and reversing it, they have at least stabilized it and stopped the progression of the osteoporosis and the osteopenia. So it's a really, really cool workout. It takes about 20 minutes to do it. You only have to do it once a week, and you can get all of these great benefits. But in addition to that, it increases balance exponentially and strength and spatial awareness and just how you use your body and how it responds. Just recently, and I find this really fascinating, but when I think about it, I'm like, yeah, you know how when people get older, they have a tendency to fall forward, and people walk around and they look down at their feet all the time and they don't even know what's coming up because they're looking at their feet. As they get progressively more mature, because also we don't allow the use of the word old in the clinic. It's a dirty 3-letter word. What we end up doing is we wear shoes all the time, and a lot of people that are more aged don't take their shoes off. They always have something on their feet. So they lose that capacity of their toes to work and to have strength and to grasp, because what should happen as you begin to fall forward is that your toes should engage and it should stop some of that forward motion and give you a chance to bend your knees, recover, come back into an upright position. But people don't do that because they take their shoes off and they stay in the house, or they keep their shoes on and they stay in the house, and they wouldn't think about going out on uneven ground without something on their feet. And so we just lose a lot of that. And so one of the things we started incorporating recently with our power plate workouts is making sure that everybody's back there, and when they have their feet on it in any way, that we're working their toes, that we're causing them to do toe raises on the power plates. And so we're seeing some really cool, really rapid changes in people's ability to balance and to function. It's awesome. God is good.
Yeah, you're starting to get a trend over here going. Ministry and everything we do. All right, now last but not least, I definitely want to jump on the software therapy, and I kind of try to read a little bit about it. I love the fact that it's non-invasive. I love the fact that it's quick. I love the fact that it attacks and tackles many different things from the inside out. So talk to me a little bit about software therapy, because my wife and I are big fans for non-invasive technology, and we've done a lot of it over the years. I've helped the company go public that focus on all the type of technology that's non-invasive. But tell me a little bit specifically about the software therapy, or soft wave, as you provide it.
Sure. As you're starting to pick up, probably many of the things that I do have come about as a result of something that's happened to me. And all of it's horse related, by the way. So 2+ years ago and a little bit, I bought a new horse and I brought her home, and it was one of those summer nights in Texas, and it was supposed to be dry and hot, and all of a sudden the wind changed. It came up, the clouds came over, it started thundering and lightning, started raining. My other 2 horses came in the barn, and I was trying to get my new mare in the barn, and she didn't want to go. And I thought, oh, well, she needs to go in there. So I didn't think very clearly about that. I've been around horses all my life, and it was just literally this perfect storm in the storm. And so I went down into the area, and I was going to just kind of go, move her in. And she started into the barn, and just as she did, this sheet of water came off the top of the barn and hit her right in the face. And
Oh
she
boy.
jumped back, and when she did, I waved my arms at her again because I thought that she was going to like come over the top of me. Well, when I did that, she thought it was this hoodoo in the dark with something else, and I saw her hind end come up, and I knew she was going to kick. And I had on tall rubber rain boots, and my boot got hung up in the mud, and I couldn't get away from her fast enough. And so she kicked me right below where my leg joins onto my torso and my groin.
Oh boy.
Yeah, and so I managed to get in the barn. My grandson and his friend were in the house. I had them come with their car and take me to the hospital. I was positive it was broken. And we got in there and x-rayed it, and it wasn't fractured. And I truly believe that one of the reasons that it wasn't fractured was because of my tenure and my time that I've spent over the years on the power plates and with the Be Strong system. So anyway, long story short though, after a couple of weeks, it still wasn't doing very well. And so I had a friend of mine order an MRI for me. Went in and had the MRI done, and I had almost a complete tear of what's called the sartorius muscle, which starts right at the top of your pelvis on the front side and then kind of goes at an angle and attaches just below the knee on the inside. It's one of your major hip and knee stabilizers. It allows you to pick your leg up and cross one leg over the other. So I had gone through with my equipment what I had and was doing really well. I had looked at the Softwave TRT in the spring before I had gotten kicked and was like, okay, well, it's nice. But anyway, as I'd done everything else, I finally went, I wonder if that Softwave thing might help my leg. And so I called the company up and talked to them and found out it's a very expensive piece of equipment. And so then right after the first of the year, this year, I got a text from the company, and they said, would you like to experience Softwave for 60 days at no cost? And I was like, well, yeah, I can find out.
That's a deal you won't say no to.
Find out in 60 days if this is going to help my leg or not.
Yeah.
And so that's what we did. And now we've added it into our many other therapies and devices that we do. I was the girl in school that said, I'm never, ever, ever going to use anything but my hands. I don't need anything but my hands. And boy, did that come back to haunt me. You don't want to ever say ever and never, for sure.
I believe that. Well, that's fascinating. And first of all, amazing. I mean, no wonder you look like you just graduated college 4 years ago, just first and foremost, because, taking care of yourself and using this technology. And I love that you are a product of your product, right? Like you said, everything that I introduced, I created it for myself first, because there's, individuals out there who do things just for the sake of a payout. And you're actually doing it because you knew it was something that was solid for yourself, and you passed it on to everybody else. And that's admirable. And why not make it a business as well? We're going to take one more break. When we come back, we're going to dive into your vision for the next phase for you. I know we had a couple of conversations on what could be the possibility to kind of make this information available for the masses. And of course, you got a book that I want to also bring some shine onto it. So we'll take a break and we'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Dr. Kathi Perry. My patients call me Dr. Kathi. I'm a chiropractor, a licensed acupuncturist, and I practice what we call Beyond Chiropractic. I help people write the manual for their bodies, because unless you're different than everybody else, you didn't come with a manual attached to your ankle. This is Holly. She's my 23-year-old mare. Riding horses is one of my things that I do for my therapy, and I hope you have something that you do too. I started out with this holistic lifestyle when I was very young, thanks to my mother, who did organic gardening and reflexology. In case you don't know, reflexology is working pressure points on the hands and feet that are associated with organs and different parts of the body. I'm also just one of you. I'm a mother, I'm a wife, I'm a grandmother. I've won lots of awards over the years, but my greatest reward is seeing people walk through my door, to having people call me, and tell me that they feel better than they've ever felt in their entire lives. We also practice functional physiology and functional medicine, which gets down to root cause resolution. Not just the symptoms, not just trying to put a Band-Aid over things, but we really help make you strong, make you better, and make you well.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Ali Mehdaoui in here at the ME show, and still with Dr. Kathi Perry. My goodness, how much information have we gotten? Please make sure that you do visit healthbyhandswellness.com. Make sure that you subscribe, make sure that you follow, and if you are a patient and you're hearing this information, also make sure that you leave a review as well. Incredible information that you've shared with us thus far. Dr. Perry, I'm curious, do you only work in your facilities, or do you actually do any online work with individuals who may need in the different services that you offer?
Mostly it's in my facility. I do some lifelines online with people, and I do some I do a lot of consultations, and sometimes if people are gone on vacation or whatever and they have something happen, I'll get on FaceTime with them and talk them through doing some things that either they can do for themselves or their family can do for them while I'm coaching them to do that. So primarily in my clinic, I think that most of the time, all of the things that I learned up until COVID hit in 2020 were in person at different towns, countries, wherever. And since then, many of the techniques have gone to developing an online presence and being able to teach new participants and new doctors via online. That's one of the things that I'm looking for and wanting to create some time for myself. I'm getting ready to change up my hours, change my days off, create some more daylight hours for me so that I can actually see my horse's shadows in natural light as opposed to arena lights at night.
God willing, yeah.
Yeah, and so as I've also kind of toned down the amount of new patients that I'm taking, then I'm getting engaged with some other things. So I'm getting ready to put together some training materials and see if we can't at least make some really basic practitioners of doctors. There's only one of me, and as I said, a lot of times it was just because God put somebody in front of me and said, here, I'm supposed to show you this. And it was passed down to them from someone. I've worked with some of the world's top healers, and they've shown me things that isn't written down anywhere except in my notebook. And so I'm really feeling a need to pay it forward so this doesn't get lost. And I like to teach and I like to talk. So I think we're going to make it a really good thing and teach people a whole lot of things that have been word of mouth and need to be written down and presented so that it can provide a legacy for all the doctors that went before me and that shared things with me as well.
Absolutely. And our team is very ready and adamant to make sure that we are part of spreading this message and putting the movement out there, because I mean, if I am flabbergasted and amazed and excited about the information that I just received and learned from you, my wife's favorite part about our business is watching the interviews, because to us it's like, we have our own docu-series where I'm interviewing the world's greatest. And then, when the episode is produced, hey, got a new episode. And we sit down and we're watching an hour to an hour and a half while we're eating popcorn or whatever the case may be. So she loves, and my favorite thing is when she starts calling me out on things like, you hear what she just said, you do that part. You heard what he just, so I know that the world needs your information, needs your message. So I cannot wait. Talk to me about your book. When was it written? What does it focus on? And I know it's going to go through a rebranding phase as well, but tell us a little bit about your book.
Well, this is my book. You can find it on Amazon. It's called Defying Death, The Road to a Quality Life, and we have pro-wellness and reactive disease. So it came about as a result of people asking me the same questions over and over and over again. And I had actually done an interview with someone back about 2014, And as a result of the interview, I had that whole thing transcribed. And a lot of it was, how did you get to where you're at? What are you doing? You know, tell us some stories. So when we had it all transcribed, that's what went into the original book and the original copy. And it's done very well. I am feeling the need and the desire, though, to have a new cover design for it. And I have a whole lot more, even cooler stories now than what I had before. So I'm looking forward to adding some of those into it and utilizing it so people can get to know me. Know a few of my skeletons in my closet. Maybe I'll put some more in this next book.
We all have them. We absolutely all have them. Now, let's talk about, the vision that you have. Obviously, you've done a lot. You've achieved a lot. You've written a book. You've established a very successful business. You've seen amazing, phenomenal throughout your career. What is next for Dr. Perry? I know that's the $1 million question.
It is $1 million question. I've tried to bring several people into my practice over the years, and they all start out and go, "Oh, we want to do just exactly what you do," and then they find out that they're going to have to work really hard to do that. Have some extra classes and do some extra seminars to understand things. I have brought 2 people in that I have had right on the brink of being able to work with me and ultimately, I would hope, be able to take over my practice. However, one of them just decided they didn't want to work as hard, and the other one had bigger ideas than what they were to stay there. So he's a very successful doctor in his own right now, and we do still practice very similarly. He's one of the ones that I will let put his hands on me just because he is so good, and I trust him because he does a lot of the same things I do. But I have about a 7-day protocol that I do with all of my new patients, particularly the ones that are really hard, really chronic, really broken. I worked with a young man a week and a half ago who had had brain surgery 3 weeks prior. And he's adrenaline junkie, 31, paramedic and firefighter from Colorado. He had multiple injuries over the years with other traumatic brain injuries and motorcycle accident. He was a snowboarder. The list just goes on and on with all the trauma that he'd had. So he ended up having a brain bleed, and he had a clot that got lodged up against his pons, which is part of the brain stem, and was having all kinds of balance, vestibular issues, memory issues, couldn't talk, think straight. And they found this clot, and they brought him to Dallas. His parents live here in Dallas. And so his mother had been a patient of mine a year or so ago. I work with a functional dentist in Mansfield, Texas. And she had referred this patient to me that had a TMJ issue, and I'd sent her back and hadn't seen her for a year. So she texts me. A lot of people have my text and my cell number. She texts me and she goes, "Hey, my son just had brain surgery, and do you think you could see him? He's here for another week and a half." And I went, "Really? You're just now calling me and let me know?" And I had just told my staff I wasn't going to take any more new patients until probably the 1st of February. But I was really interested when she was talking to me about it. So I was like, yes, I'll see him. And so anyway, we crammed 6 visits into 4 days. And when he came in on the first day, he was on a walker. He couldn't walk up and down the halls without holding himself. He couldn't look out and walk. He was literally trying to just keep his balance by seeing where his feet were and looking down. He had really dark purple glasses because he has so much light sensitivity. He had a lot of sound sensitivity. He was kind of a hot mess, and I was like, wow. His incision on his head was healing up really well. He had a scar about like this from the back of his skull down into the lower part of his cervical spine. And after I worked on him for about 3 hours that first day. And after we got done, he stood up and he was just like, OMG, that is like amazing. I don't even know what to say. And it just kept getting better and better from there. And when he walked out on Sunday afternoon to fly back to Colorado the next day, he was able to stand on one foot. He could walk on his tippy toes. He could look straight out ahead and walk. We kind of laughed and said, look, he's going to break into a sprint here in a minute. So I checked on him yesterday, I guess it was, and said, hey, how you doing since you've flown back and there's big altitude change? And he said, well, I still feel really great. He goes, I am pretty tired because of the change in the altitude and elevation. And I said, well, you know what? I said, the good news to that is that in a couple of 3 weeks, you're going to start acclimating back to that, and it'll all be good. And I told him, I said, if you think you want to go out and do something that somebody might think was stupid, since you've just had all of this work done and you've had brain surgery, I said, why don't you call me first and let's talk about it before you just go and do it. And make sure if it's something that I don't agree on, at the very least, that you'll wait until just before you come back in a couple, 3 months for a follow-up visit, and try it then so that we can put you back together. I said, but please don't go out and do something just because you feel so good and overdo it before you're really ready. And so anyway, he agreed that he would. We'll see. His mother kind of looked at me and went, maybe he'll listen to it from you. I'm just his mother.
I believe it. Yeah. Well, that's fascinating. I gotta say, I know you have still a life and a life ahead of you, and God bless you so much for what you're doing for the marketplace. Thank you for your contribution, not only to everybody's health, but for caring enough, because there are many people that I know that they do enough for themselves and they're like, I'm good. I can just go ahead and retire and enjoy the rest of my life. And they don't really think about, how can I contribute and leave this information behind? And you're still active and you're still going at it. So it is fascinating. There's usually in our audience, in our listeners, there's always one person, a guy or a gal, that has the mindset of, yeah, I hear what you're saying, but what is your message to that one person who just doesn't see enough value in themselves to take all these different information that you've just shared with us and doesn't necessarily see enough value in themselves to apply and just work on every and all areas? Your final message to that person before we wrap it up.
Well, I think that one of the things is that people change and take the initiative to change, and they really listen when whatever price they're now paying no longer will allow the benefits of staying where they're at to allow them to stay there. People come to me when they've been everywhere else and there just is no hope they've been given. Because I'm a horse person, I have another saying that says you can lead the horse to water, you can't make him drink. So ultimately, you can either turn the horse loose or you can shoot him. And there's a law against shooting people and things. So, basically, people change when they come to it on their own. I used to take it really personally and go, wow, you're not even listening. The fact is, not everybody's path is the same. My responsibility is to put it out there and to try to present it in such a way and in language that people can understand. I don't use a lot of big words. And in fact, when I'm with other doctors, sometimes I have to stop and go, okay, wait a minute, let me find that word that's back here someplace that I know I learned and passed on a test, because that's not how I explain it to my patients. So I try to break it down for everybody and just realize that baby steps are where you start. If you don't drink water, start out drinking more water. If you eat a lot of sugar, don't do that. If you use a lot of artificial sweeteners, let's find something else. It's just a matter sometimes of changing a little thing. And if you change enough little things, then suddenly you've changed a lot of things and you've changed a life.
Totally heard that. Ladies and gentlemen, she goes by the name of Dr. Kathi Perry. Her website is healthbyhandswellness.com, and she is incredibly talented, decorated, awarded in every single way. And you are an angel walking amongst us, just so you know. I am so intrigued and cannot wait to nurture this relationship and see how else we can help and spread your message everywhere else. So, ladies and gentlemen, this has been an exclusive of the ME Studios. A huge shout out to you, the listener and or the viewer. Make sure you hit that subscribe and like button, and definitely go to the description where there's all the information and contact info for Dr. Kathi Perry, just in case you may want to engage in the conversation and engage with her in her social media assets and or in her website. Definitely, it's right there for you. Big thanks to Rich Tomes, our Chief Production Officer, behind the equipment. A huge, big shout out to Tanya Tanika. Our prayers are out to you and your family. She's had a huge circumstance with her family. She is our partner in crime in here. And of course, my beautiful, sweet honey, my wife, and the president of the ME Studios, Claudia Maritza Mehdaoui. A huge shout out and thank you for all you do. And with that, we love you and appreciate you. And until next time, have a blessed day, everybody.
I was corporate, loved my job, traveled just enough to be fun and not a pain, and thought I'd do it forever. And in 15 minutes, that all changed. At 35, my life was turned upside down due to some injuries that, from different medical procedures, they scarred my spinal cord. So when I came to Dr. Kathi, I could barely sit, walk, or stand on my own. Certainly didn't have my wiggle. And very low energy, bad brain fog. So I thought my life was over, and then I met Dr. Kathi. And not only has she been my healer and the reason that I have the quality of life that I have, she was my way shower. I also do energy work, and she was my way shower on that, which has created a wonderful next chapter for me, having more fun than ever, doing what I love to do, and have the energy to do that because of the natural path that I took. Can't say enough wonderful things about her because she's not only my doctor, my healer, my guide, my way shower. She's the reason I'm here. And she's my bestie.